Welcome to Master Your Money and Mindset, the podcast where financial success meets personal growth. I'm your host, Elizabeth Heiza, Chief Marketing Officer at Barnum Financial Group. Here on this podcast, we dive into the powerful connection between your financial well-being and your mindset. Today, we are tackling a very important topic, which is common concerns clients have when processing financial applications. So what that means is whether you are applying for life insurance or if you're opening some sort of investment account, the process can feel very overwhelming. But don't worry, we wrote this episode so we can break down the most common concerns that we hear from clients on a daily basis and provide tips on how to navigate them smoothly. Because there is nothing that we are going to talk about today that can't be overcome. But to join me in this very important conversation is my dear friend and colleague, Amelia Nathanson, Vice President of Operations at Barnum. Welcome again, Amelia.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Happy to be back.
So happy to have you. You and I talked about this episode and we both got so excited because we've never talked about this before from the client's perspective.
For sure. And I think it might be something people don't think their questions are worthy of, if you will. So I'm going to make a decision to do something. I'm just going to take whatever steps are needed as opposed to getting that transparency up front.
Yep. And getting yourself ready, mentally ready for that up front. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, Amelia, I feel like it's key that you tell our listeners what the VP of operations is, because you guys are the backbone of this organization and of many financial institutions, but so rarely spoken about. So tell us what goes on in operations.
Absolutely. So we are certainly the wizards behind the curtain. We, like most other financial institutions, banks, are a team of folks that have specific skill sets in certain areas. And we do what I like to describe as everything once the client says yes. So once the client puts pen to paper or in a world like we're in now, electronically says yes, we're on for execution. So whether that is a step like the life insurance process that may have multiple sort of buckets that need to be filled before we get to an approval or a payment, or starting an investment account, which can have a variety of different stopgaps along the way, we're taking that sort of client onus through to fruition. We do that at our firm through a financial advisor and that financial advisor quarterbacking the process on behalf of that client. But each institution will have a process that may look a little different from there. And, you know, we're super cognizant as well that a lot of transactions clients go through are direct to consumer as well, which can have its pitfalls too. So we're kind of constantly examining processes too. How can we make this easier for the client? What steps are no longer maybe necessary? But in a financial services field and a very highly regulated insurance field as well, there are certain steps that just will never go away. And I think sometimes clients aren't aware of that or aren't explained the whys behind some of the things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm anxious to get to your list of what, you know, clients do say their concerns are, but I can probably anticipate some of them just on the pushback that we get along the way. I would imagine.
And all of these processes, no matter what you're doing, like you said, life insurance, opening up account, there's so much going on in that time. So the client may not, you want to get to that yes or get to that action step that nobody really thinks about what's going to happen once you get to that point. So the client is just not ready for a little bit of invasiveness that may happen to actually get from yes to the action happening.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. Here's what I have on my list based on the conversation you and I had together. So number one, clients always seem concerned about the application approval time.
Okay.
So in your world, what does that mean?
So I think that, and, in my other world, right, I study sort of how humans make decisions and process information. So I understand that fundamentally that happens differently for everyone. But I think there's a certain semblance that once I say yes, I just want it to be done, right? So when
you want to check it off,
when's this going to be done? And oftentimes for transactions like we spoke about life insurance specifically, there can be, different things that just take longer.
Yeah.
More vendors are involved, or, I'll probably reference this multiple times in our conversation. Life insurance, unfortunately, is still a pretty stodgy old process, right? And it's a little awkward. Someone's got to come to your house and take fluids from you. It's not necessarily something you're like, oh, sign me up 2 times. But then inherent in that is the timelines that takes as well. So I think sometimes clients may put it off because they want to see that closure or that completion. Yeah. So if if this is going to take a month, I don't have a month right now, as opposed to just starting the process and
it'll go fast once you're moving. Right. And I think the concern comes from, is this going to impact something else? Like if getting a policy is part of an overall financial plan or estate plan, you want to get that piece of the puzzle done so you can move on to other stuff. So I think that I would imagine that's where the concern is coming from.
Absolutely. I also think that if there isn't a prioritization model in there, or that one is dependent on the other that's explained to the client, it may just all become overwhelming and be, mismashed into that plan. And then again, if folks don't see steps or aren't coached to steps, they'll just avoid it overall.
Yep. Or you make up your own story about what's going on and where it is when you don't have information.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's one concern or uneasiness. Another one that throws people off guard is credit score.
Okay.
Or if there is an impact to their credit score, or they didn't know their credit score was going to be looked at, or maybe their credit score is not where they want it to be because something just happened.
Sure. So first, let's kind of hit that one right on the head. It's sort of a common misconception, rightfully so, that credit is directly aligned maybe with things like financial services products, brokerage accounts, trading stocks and bonds, even life insurance, annuity types of products. Those are actually not inherent in any type of credit rating or score.
Great.
The only type of, let's call it on the streets financial product that would really take into account your credit score, and this is only in certain states, would be like your property and casualty products. So how your auto and home is rated, et cetera, et cetera. So, folks will have questions about that, but your credit is actually not necessarily run as part of that application process.
One less thing. Check it off. Cross that one right off.
Well, what's interesting though is, the most common products that folks own are credit cards and checking accounts. So it's not surprising that you would think, this is just another thing that they're going to run my credit for, but it's actually not.
All right, we'll take it. So if it's not credit though, there are other eligibility requirements that are concerning or that you do have to look at.
Sure.
What are some of those?
So I think the biggest piece, let's talk maybe with a fairly complicated topic. So from an investment standpoint, there may be a required minimum for the type of product you're investing in, or the type of advice you might be receiving might have a minimum. Outside of that, just requirements maybe that you're here in the States, or if you're not, you have a power of attorney that can make decisions on your behalf here in the States. On the investment side, there's not too much else as far as eligibility, might go besides, age and things that you're qualified for on that level. On the life insurance side, going to look a lot different. So obviously we've talked on prior episodes about this. Life insurance is determined by ratings, and life insurance are determined by things like age and sometimes habitual types of things that you do, as well as family history, as well as lots of different factors. So we do find that clients hesitate to apply because they have a condition, or they've heard on the street that, my height and weight is going to be way off for getting insurance, where, that might not necessarily be the case, certainly might not necessarily be the case across the board. And then lastly, if the need is there, it may be something that you just need to pay for. Because it's going to, match up with premium.
Or at least need to try.
Sure.
Like fill out the application, see how it comes back, talk to your financial advisor about what an appropriate next step would be.
Absolutely.
Because I think in our heads, we all, as soon as I lose, 10 more pounds, or as soon as I get my blood pressure down to where it should be.
Just got to figure out this iron thing and then I can apply.
Exactly.
Right.
I just want to get off this prescription and then I'll do it.
Yep.
All understandable. I have empathy for all of those statements. I've definitely made them when it came to my own personal situation.
Sure.
So you can understand them all. But it's always good to work with a professional who can tell you if those things are going to impact your premium as much as maybe you think they will.
Absolutely. And also advise again on maybe what company or carrier might be best for that specific condition, because that does actually exist, right? Also, maybe just applying to your earlier point is most important to get coverage in force. And then you may be able to apply for a change in risk class futuristically once you kick the tobacco habit or what have you.
Yep.
So I think it's super important if the coverage is deemed necessary that folks just take the steps to get themselves under it and see where they're at.
See where you're at. Exactly. Another big one that I actually see in my world a lot in marketing is the issue of security of my personal information.
Yes.
What's going to happen to it? How do you protect it? Those are really, really common questions we get. What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. So you and I probably work on a case a week
we
at
do.
this point.
Yes,
that comes in, at either entry point, and what do we have on this to go out to the client? Absolutely. And obviously cybersecurity and technology factors are placing heavy burdens financially on financial companies that are providing these product services. I see that, clients do hesitate. Well, why are you asking me for that? You need another copy of my license. You need another, you need a notary. You need a medallion signature, right? But I always encourage my team to flip the lens for the client or the advisor that they're working with, right? This is actually for the client's protection. It may look like it's just another step or barrier to entry, but it's actually the way in which we verify that the person is the person and that we have the right documentation on file. Similarly, the highest sort of financial burden on the insurance side is misrepresentation on applications. So the falsification of information actually coming from the client's side is placing that heavy burden.
So it's a protection on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. So this is not a problem that is going to go away anytime soon. We'll just look at it a little bit differently. And I think that companies will probably start to build it into their operating expenses, if you will.
Sure. What I love most, though, is that clients ask. Like you said, we get this question all the time of how you are protecting my information, which I love, because to me, that is equaling a very educated client who was probably told by someone to ask that question. And of course, we send along our privacy policy and how we do that and everything. But I love it when I hear that question. It makes me sad that people have to ask.
Sure.
But I do love it because it means that clients are educated and they care and they're taking that extra step to be curious and find that out.
Yeah. We get a lot of questions. We do use a tool that sort of masses if you have life insurance with us, if you have investment accounts with us. And most of the questions we get on that are about the third party authentication.
Yes.
But there's like 6 different ways you can authenticate yourself, which I just think is I just think it's so important that people are actually asking that as well. Like I'll handle and troubleshoot those things all day because it means people are using the tool and, to your point, educating themselves, but also protecting themselves and signing up for the tool. So I think you have to look at both sides when you examine those pieces, because it oftentimes looks very bureaucratic.
Yeah.
I think that we have to have these policies, and I think the document for investment accounts is literally 60 pages of disclosures, but it's literally telling the client, this is how we protect everything.
Yes.
This is,
Yes.
So,
and no one wants to take the time to read it. You just want the easy answer of,
where's your one pager?
Exactly. Am I protected? And give me the quick Cliff Notes version of how. I get it. This one we talked a little bit about, but it comes up a lot that clients wonder whether they will be approved. So that goes back to the health conversation we had.
Yeah. And, also some other factors, maybe just to kind of put a bow on that one. There are other factors, lifestyle factors that can come into play too. So maybe you scuba dive, maybe you heli-ski. Right. So again, it's not saying you can't get insurance because you do those things, but educate yourself and figure out if those are really knockout or kick out questions to to the coverage.
Yep. And I love what you said. Not every carrier treats everything the same way. So again, you have to work with your financial advisor who will know what the best carriers are to get you insurance for your specific lifestyle or health status, whatever it is. Another one is the documentation requirements. This one comes up all the time.
Yeah.
Is how much, why do I need to give it? In what format do I need to give it?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about that briefly, on the authentication documents. How many times do I need to sign this? Or, how many more, again, copies of my ID can I give you? But I think this is another one we see very heavy on the life insurance side, mainly with how many questions may get asked back to the client.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, right? Yeah. So you're potentially asking the client for records from their doctor's office, or you're questioning them maybe on information that came through medical claims or prescription check, all things that are very inherent, again, in the life insurance process from our side, from an operational side, but to a client, it seems very invasive. And it can seem, depending on the experience of the underwriter, very much like a back and forth, like this game of ping pong. When's this going to be done? And clients do, they get very frustrated by that. I think the important one here is be as transparent upfront as possible. Something that may not be a big deal at all, and truly is not a big deal from an underwriting standpoint as well. If you think it's going to take too long, if you tell them, right, it's going to take way longer if you don't, because they're going to find out, have to get re-questioned, et cetera, et cetera. What is very cool, and we're finding more now, is with the onset of everybody's got a My Chart and can kind of go in and get their lab work or get their last visit. Clients have a lot more ownership over that piece of the process.
So they can move it along faster.
They can really help it. Right.
Okay.
And I think traditionally, because the word is right in there, it's financial services.
Yep.
Maybe advisors have shied away from asking clients to be part of the process when the client would really prefer to be part of the process. We're all rowing in the same direction, whatever colloquialism you want to use. Yes. So that's been kind of a game changer, but definitely see that as a point of pushback, why a client would be concerned with that.
And I would imagine, to your point, the clients love the partnership or being put in the driver's seat to pull a record versus wondering, well, what records are my doctor sending over? And kind of not knowing, and have people, looking at your stuff behind you. So that's actually a really great point. We were talking about that the other day, and I should have known that you would bring that up. But going along those lines of services, I think in our world, the advisor acts as that point of service for the client, right? And I think clients, frequent communication with your advisor. Don't be shy if you are getting concerned or getting frustrated with something, or you just want to check in and say, hey, it's been a couple days since we spoke, or a week since I submitted this. When should I expect to hear back? Like, those are very fair questions to ask.
For sure. I totally agree with that. And the other thing we need to be cognizant of, and we would be here all day if we talked about like the pro chart of going with different vendors or carriers, is clients have access right on this bad boy, right on their phone or mobile device. You hear it all the time. Oh, I got approved like instantly. So why do I need to go back and forth with this guy? But we may be talking about a very different product, right? So I think the transparency is what I'm getting at, is that, our process does look a lot different than that. And it may, time being equal, take a lot longer, but this is actually what you're getting for going through this process versus that process. And whatever is the fit is the fit.
And typically our work is part of a holistic plan.
Sure.
So just getting one life insurance policy is just a small piece of an overall, it's not just transactional business that you're working on when you come to be a client of Barnum. It's typically a piece of something.
Sure. Yeah. And it looks very similar, Elizabeth, on the investment side as well. To be an investment client of ours, you may be looking at a very lengthy e-signed document, once you go through everything. Very different experience than going on xyz.com and opening an account, but nobody's checking on you on the XYZ account. Nobody even knows if I've logged in.
Making sure you check the right box or you signed up for the right thing. And now what the fees are, like all that stuff is confusing.
Yeah. And sometimes easier ends up being much more costly.
So we talked a lot about what will affect either opening account or getting a policy and what might have an impact on it. But what happens if a client gets declined? Because that was another big concern, is people don't try because they assume they're going to be declined. And some of them maybe legitimately know that they might be.
Sure.
Maybe they've been declined in the past. They've worked on their health a little bit, or they had the procedure, or they had, they got their income back up to where it should be. So now they want to go ahead and make a move. But what happens if somebody does get a decline?
So this is one of the places where it is so crucial to be working with an advisor. I think that if you're someone who knows they have significant health concerns, but also has significant wealth concerns, not having a plan in place about how to essentially fill that bucket in another way. There are, unfortunately, conditions, lifestyle pieces that cannot be overcome in the life insurance space. There are very, very niche carriers that you may have an outside chance with if you can then afford the premiums, like anything else. But most clients who are in that situation have educated themselves to the extent that maybe they are working with an advisor, and there may be a financial services product that fits that need a little bit better, either through survivorship coverage with their spouse who may be healthy, or investing those dollars in a different way. So I would answer that one loud and clear and say, if you're somebody who knows that they need a specific type of need met, right? And life insurance is not going to fill that need. They need some advice as far as, what another route to go is.
Yeah. So that's the most critical time that you should be working with somebody, because it sounds like there are opportunities.
Sure.
You're not at a dead end road if you get denied. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It's just, it's not as straightforward for someone like that as seeing a $20 a month commercial on the TV and going to the website, right? Yeah. But I do think that is the most crucial scenario where someone should be working with someone who's educated to provide that advice.
That's fair. All right. So those are top concerns that you and I came up with. So now that we've outlined those, let's simply talk about ways that clients can address them, which will ensure just a much smoother process. Yeah. Number one on our list, which after talking about all this, it seems pretty obvious, but just be prepared.
Yeah.
Like do research ahead of time. Ask questions. How long is this process going to take? What should I expect? Amelia is also our resident Colby expert. So for those of you who don't know what Colby is, we could do an episode on that in and of itself. But in a nutshell, Amelia, tell them what Colby is and how something like that could come into play.
Sure. So Colby is an assessment tool we use at the firm. It's a little bit different than a traditional personality assessment because it really tells us how folks work when they're striving, which basically means how they make decisions and how they process information and how they deal with risk. So probably not a better tool we could possibly have in the financial services industry. But what that tells us is that people definitely need a lot of time potentially to process a lot of information. They like to research things in depth before they're going to make any decisions. Some people are very, very responsive to having a track to run on and are motivated by closure. So there's definitely various ways in which advisors need to flex their style when working with different types of clients. But from a client perspective, understanding how I might have this instinctive need to have all the details before I'm going to say yes, right? Is very powerful for me versus somebody who says, yep, that sounds good. Like sign me up, I'll take 2. Yep. And might not also care about a timeline. Like when it's done, it's done. Yep. Because just that closure doesn't intrinsically motivate me per se. Yep. So having that knowledge here definitely helps us when we have a client who is like chomping at the bit, right? You may have somebody who just like, they need to know when the end is in sight and we need to help provide that for them. And clients aren't going to necessarily ask all the questions. So sometimes it's up to that advisor to describe to them what this process is going to look like. I use this scenario with young advisors all the time. Like, listen, it's uncomfortable to have a conversation with your client. I get it. You have to tell them like this strange nurse is going to come to your house and literally take your blood at your kitchen table. I totally understand it. but I'd rather know than not know and have the person show
with
up.
a needle and a cup.
You got it, right? So like, just put the lens on and be like, okay, I would probably rather know that. Than like smoke and mirrors. Well, maybe, just tell me.
Just tell me what it is. Well, and a lot of clients maybe don't know their own Colby or MO. So to your point, they're like, and they think them just agreeing to buy the insurance policy just buys the policy.
Yeah.
And then when we start like literally poking at them or asking a million questions or asking for documentation, they're frustrated, confused, angry. Maybe the advisor did go over it, but it was too much information
all at once,
and
for sure.
they glossed over it, or because they didn't really like to hear that, they kind of pushed it out of their head. So kind of knowing yourself, doing the research ahead of time. To your point, Amelia, I am a deadline driven girl. I just want to know when can I expect this to happen?
Yes, you are.
I don't care if it's 4 weeks or 4 months, just when.
Yeah, when's that going to be done? And that's to your earlier point too, I think super important, regardless of your Colby MO, it's really, really important to work with someone who's going to help you prioritize what those are. Either needs-based priorities or want-based priorities that can help drive that sense of closure a little bit quicker for the client. And then the things that might naturally just take longer can be going on in the background, if you will, or we might not start that until this piece is set. Right.
Yep.
So really important to know how folks are motivated. Really.
Okay. That makes sense. That's a great tip. Next, also seems a little bit logical as we talked about this, but we talked about how just organizing your documentation could be helpful.
Absolutely. So knowing where your social security card is, knowing where your passport is and when it expired, right? Well, we laugh, but these are things that like, I think I'm the most more organized person in the world. I've had a passport expiry pop up on me more than I'd like to admit.
Yeah, because you don't use it so often. Same thing with social security card.
Yeah.
You assume it's in the filing cabinet, but then when you go look at it, you're like, oh, where did I move it?
Similar. One we didn't touch on directly today, but if you're applying for disability insurance, they may request income tax returns. Who knows where their copy of their income tax return is? Or did we file e-file last year? Did we use an accountant in that particular year? So getting, your ducks in a row, at least knowing where things are.
Asking the question, what am I going to need? And then go hunt it down, before now people are waiting for you. And now you're delaying the process, right? Because it's taking you 3 or 4 days to find whatever it is.
Yeah. And then similarly, if you are someone who knows that they're applying for life insurance and you are on a fair amount of medication, or you do see a couple of different types of doctor information, what prescription, what dosage you're on, super important. Again, just that transparency up front. Some of those items might just get looked at and filed away because you're upfront about them, then them popping up and a question to be asked after the
fact.
Very
fair. We talked about when it comes to security, only applying through a trusted financial institution. So whatever that means to you, but if something seems too good to be true, or someone's price is significantly lower, or someone's fee is significantly lower, just make sure you check them out.
Yeah.
If you're getting an uneasy feeling about something, that probably means your intuition is kicking up and maybe they're not as trusted as you want them to be.
Yes. Things can be too good to be true. Yeah. In my prep, just for this and some of our notes, if you just put in the Google machine, life insurance approval, right? 6 or 7 companies, or we'll call them other search engines, are going to pop up for you. It's very easy to click into that and get led right down a rabbit hole. Now, some may end up being reputable by the time you get to the 4th or 5th click. But then we go right to what you just mentioned. Sometimes price is the only lever there. So what, are you actually buying? Is there convertibility to that? Is it a company that's going to be there to pay out your benefit?
Yes. The most important question.
Yeah.
Will the company be there when you need your benefit paid out?
So sometimes
when you need your money.
Yes. Exactly. So sometimes, and I think I said these same words earlier, sometimes easy can end up being a lot more costly than you might think. And, same vein, sometimes less costs early on can be much more costly futuristically.
Yep.
And whether that's time or, you end up having to fight to get your money
Yep.
back or get the benefit that was supposed to be paid out. All things to just keep in mind when you're making that type of decision.
Yeah, you got to do your homework. Like I said, we love when clients ask questions because that means they're educated to me.
For
so
sure.
I love that. But do your homework. Work with the companies that have been around forever because chances are they will continue to be around.
Yeah.
Look for companies that you know, like, and trust. And then even when you find them, ask questions, do your homework, make sure you feel comfortable.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you came to any of our advisors, I actually had this happen about a week and a half ago. Had a client who was applying with us and it reached out to his advisor. The advisor kind of flipped the email to me like, I'm not sure how to answer this second question. Client just wanted to be educated. Hey, I found this. I know I applied through you. I'm going to finish the process, but I found this vendor online and it looks to be significantly less expensive. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And that was what I said to the advisor. Tell them, be transparent. It may look like this, but it doesn't have a convertibility option. And you may want to research that company specifically to see if that's a company you want to do business with based on their rating and things of that sort. So just the transparency and just to what you said, having the client ask the question, we love those questions.
Yes, we love those questions.
We would much prefer to educate a client.
And the last piece that a client could do to overcome fears, and you and I talk about this all the time, but to work with a financial professional.
Yeah.
Find a financial advisor that you know, like, and trust who can walk you or carry you through the process.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different parameters that impact every individual client's world. None of the topics we've talked about today are one size fits all.
Exactly.
For sure. Everyone's situation looks different. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone's priorities are certainly different. And the advisor can help walk through how to work on all those scenarios. I think we touched on a bunch today, but it's super important that that's someone that is reputable and it is representative of multiple different vendors and carriers and can certainly bring all those goals to fruition for the client.
And that's part of their job. And I love that you mentioned that. I love that you said financial services because that is their job, or that's how we look at it here at Barnum, that their job is to serve.
For sure.
Is to make an impact. So whether the process is kind of long and tedious, unfortunately, or short and quick, the advisor's role is to be there to help you through it and to help the client through it.
And not only that, I think the advisor's role in having a firm like ours, just to the little plug, dust the dirt off our shoulder, right? Is we're a little bit more than that. We advocate for that client, right? So if they're up against a difficult service situation with an outside vendor or a former vendor, or unfortunately in our business, a company that maybe doesn't exist anymore, we're going to be there to help that client mitigate the bureaucracy and go through kind of some of those channels. And then similarly on the new business side, if there is something we can eliminate as a step or a checkbox for that client on the insurance or investment side, we're going to go ahead and try to do that if it's the right thing to do.
And that's what your team does. Your team is so good at that.
Well, thanks. We try. You can't win them all,
so
as they
good.
say.
But you're so good at it. Client advocacy. We know that applying for financial products can feel daunting, but being prepared and being informed can make all the difference. So understand eligibility, knowing your credit score, comparing your options, using a trusted financial institution, all those things should come into play before you go ahead and make the decision. And so many times in our world, Amelia, or at least I see it in marketing, is they've made the decision, but then buyer's remorse steps in.
Yeah.
So clients come back after just to verify things, which we're always happy to do, but it's always best to do it before. But most importantly, never ever hesitate to ask anyone questions, or specifically your financial advisor questions, to make sure that you feel comfortable. But Amelia, that is it for today's episode. For all of you listening, if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share with someone who might benefit from this information. Until next time, stay smart with your money and strong in your mindset. Thanks so much, Amelia.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for listening to Master Your Money and Mindset. You can find these episodes on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you heard. You can follow Barnum Financial Group on LinkedIn and Instagram. Thanks so much.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.